Years. Rich husband divorced her for having 3 daughters. Years later, he regretted everything. I have handled divorce cases for more than 20 years. People think the most painful divorces involve cheating, money, fighting. They're wrong. The worst ones are quieter. Years. The kind where one person slowly realizes they stop being loved for something they never controlled. And this case still bothers me because when she walked into my courtroom, she wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She looked practiced, like someone who had explained her pain so many times. She no longer expected anyone to care. Years. Her name was Emily Dawson, 34, 3 daughters, no lawyer, no family beside her. Across the room sat her husband, successful millionaire, perfect suit, perfect posture, completely calm, too calm. At first, it looked like an ordinary divorce. No violence, no cheating, no financial fraud, just one cold sentence in the file. Years. Irreconcilable differences. But then I noticed something strange. 3 children. And the father wanted nothing, no custody, no negotiation, no argument. That's when I asked him one question, simple question, dangerous answer. I asked, did you leave your wife because she gave birth to daughters? Years. And without hesitation, without emotion, he looked directly at me and said, yes. Dead silence. Nobody moved. But then he said something worse. He said, I wanted a son. And suddenly this stopped being a divorce. This became something else. Years. Because years on the bench teach you something disturbing. People don't always destroy families with anger. Sometimes they destroy them with expectations. And what I discovered next made me realize this woman had been punished for years for something that was never her fault. Years. I have presided over divorce cases for more than 2 decades. People think the loudest cases are the cruelest. They're wrong. The cruelest cases are usually quiet, no shouting, no broken furniture, no dramatic courtroom speeches. Just one person sitting there trying to understand when love quietly became punishment. Years. And this case still stays with me because when she walked into my courtroom, she didn't look angry. She didn't look defeated. She looked practiced, like someone who had already explained her pain 1,000 times and stopped expecting anyone to believe it. Her name was Emily Dawson, 34 years old, 3 daughters. Years. No lawyer, no family sitting behind her, and one divorce file. Across the courtroom sat her husband. Christopher Dawson, 41, very successful, luxury construction business, expensive watch, perfect posture, calm face. Years on the bench teach you something strange. People who feel guilty often over-explain. Years. People who feel entitled usually stay relaxed. Christopher looked relaxed, too relaxed. Interesting, very interesting. I opened the file, standard petition, no violence claim, no financial fraud, no infidelity, nothing dramatic, reason listed, irreconcilable differences. I almost moved forward, almost, but experience stopped me. Years. Because sometimes the most important evidence is hidden in ordinary paperwork. I looked again, 3 daughters, ages 11, 12, 13, no custody fight. Interesting, very interesting. That bothered me immediately. Rich husband, 3 children, no custody request, no argument, no negotiation. That rarely happens. I looked toward Christopher and asked, Mr. Dawson, are you requesting shared custody? He answered immediately, no, Your Honor, too fast. Interesting, I asked, you're giving full custody? Yes, no hesitation. Interesting, very interesting. I looked at Emily, first time she reacted, not sadness. Embarrassment, that caught my attention. Years on the bench teach you. People hide humiliation differently than pain, I asked. Mrs. Dawson, do you agree? Long silence, then quietly, yes. Interesting, no anger, no resistance, no fight. That wasn't normal. I leaned back, looked at the file, then asked something simple. Simple questions create dangerous answers, I asked. Years. When did the marriage begin falling apart? Long silence. Christopher answered first. We grew apart. Interesting, that sentence should be banned from court. People say we grew apart when they don't want to say something uncomfortable. I looked at Emily, asked, do you agree? Long silence. She nodded. Too quickly. Interesting. Years. Very interesting. I asked, when? Silence. Christopher answered again. Over time. Interesting. Again. Too clean, too prepared. I looked at Emily and asked quietly, when did you notice? Long silence. She stared at the desk, then quietly said, after our 3rd child. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Interesting. Very interesting. Years. I looked at the file again. 3 daughters. I asked, what changed? Long silence. Christopher shifted slightly. Tiny movement. Big meaning. Emily looked uncomfortable, then quietly answered, he became distant. I asked how? Long silence then. He stopped coming home. Pause. He stopped eating with us. Pause. He stopped talking. Years. Pause. He stopped taking pictures. Nobody moved. Interesting. Very interesting. That last detail stayed with me. Stopped taking pictures. Years on the bench teach you. People don't notice abandonment immediately. They notice rituals disappearing. Dinner calls, father's birthdays. I asked, when did this happen? Long silence. Years. Emily answered, after the doctor appointment. Interesting. I looked up. Doctor appointment. That sentence changed everything. I asked, what appointment? Long silence. Emily swallowed, then quietly said the pregnancy appointment. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Interesting. Very interesting. I looked at Christopher. Years. First time, he looked annoyed, not emotional, annoyed. That bothered me. I asked carefully, what happened there? Christopher spoke immediately. It's irrelevant. Interesting, very interesting. People usually don't call something irrelevant unless it matters. I looked at Emily, asked, what happened? Long silence, very long silence. Years. Then quietly, they told us the baby was another girl. Nobody moved, and suddenly the courtroom felt different. Interesting, very interesting. I looked toward Christopher. His expression stayed calm. Too calm, I asked, and long silence. Emily stared down, then quietly said, he didn't speak on the drive home. Dead silence, I asked. Years. And after that, long silence. Then he moved into another room. Nobody moved. Interesting, very interesting. Christopher adjusted his tie. Tiny movement, big meaning. I asked, Mr. Dawson, is that true? He answered calmly. Yes, no shame. Interesting, I asked. Why? He looked at me and said something I still remember. Years. He said, I wanted something different for my family. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Interesting, very interesting, because years on the bench teach you. When people replace people with outcomes, something dangerous usually follows. I looked at Emily, asked, did he ever tell you directly? Long silence. Then she nodded. I asked, what did he say? Long silence, then quietly pause. Some only give excuses. Dead silence, nobody. And honestly, that was the first moment AB realized this divorce was not about marriage. This was about value. I looked toward the gallery. Nobody moved. Years. Then I asked one final question before recess question, dangerous question. I looked directly at Christopher and asked, Mr. Dawson, pause. Because she gave birth to daughters, he looked directly at me, no hesitation, no emotion, and answered, yes. Dead silence, no body moved. Years. But then he said one more full sentence, and that sentence changed the entire case. I have presided over enough divorce cases to know something dangerous. People rarely reveal their worst beliefs immediately. They leak them, one sentence at a time. And Christopher Dawson had just admitted, without hesitation, that his wife giving birth to daughters changed the marriage. That alone disturbed me. But what he said next changed the room. I looked at him and asked, what exactly do you mean by different? He stayed calm, too calm, then answered, I wanted a son. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Interesting, very interesting. People think cruel statements sound emotional. They usually don't. They sound practical. Christopher continued, I wanted someone to carry the name. Pause the business. Pause the future. Nobody moved. Interesting, very interesting. Years on the bench teach you something uncomfortable. People can convince themselves that selfishness is tradition. I looked at him, asked, and your daughters? He answered immediately, they're good girls. Interesting. That answer bothered me because he didn't say my daughters. He said good girls distance. Language reveals distance. I asked, what does that mean? He looked confused. Then calmly said, they're not what I planned. Dead silence. Nobody moved. I looked toward Emily. She didn't react. Interesting. Very interesting. That bothered me more than his answer because pain becomes dangerous when it stops surprising you. I asked Emily, when did you realize this wasn't temporary? Long silence. Then she quietly answered, the birthday asked? Which birthday? Long silence. Then our youngest. Nobody moved, I asked. What happened? Long silence. Emily looked embarrassed, then quietly said she turned 6. Pause. She asked him if she could sit next to him. Pause. He told her. Then there wasn't enough space. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Interesting, very interesting. I looked at Christopher, asked, did that happen? He answered calmly, yes. Interesting, I asked. Why? He looked surprised by the question, then said, I didn't mean anything. Years on the bench teach you. People remember intent. Children remember moments. I asked Emily, what happened after? Long she sat on the floor, pause, and told me pause. Maybe daddy likes boys more. Dead silence, nobody moved, nobody breathed, and honestly, that sentence stayed with me, not because of the child, because Emily said it without crying. Like she'd repeated it too many times. I looked at Christopher, asked, did you know she said that? He looked uncomfortable. First time, tiny movement, big meaning then. No. Interesting, very interesting. I asked, did you try to fix this? He answered, I paid for everything. Dead silence. Nobody moved. Interesting. Years on the bench teach you something painful. People confuse providing with participating. I asked, you believe money replaced presence? He looked annoyed, then answered, no, pause, but responsibility matters. Interesting. I nodded, then asked, who packed lunches? Long silence. Emily. Who attended school meetings? Emily. Who handled doctor visits? Emily. Who comforted nightmares? Emily. Interesting. Very interesting. I looked at Christopher, asked, what exactly were you building? Dead silence. Nobody moved. Christopher looked irritated, then answered, the future. I asked, for who? Long silence. First silence from him. Interesting. Very interesting. Then something happened unexpected. Court clerk approached, whispered something. I looked down, another file, temporary records, financial statements. Interesting, very interesting. I opened it, stopped right again, then looked at Emily. Interesting, very interesting. I asked Mrs. Dawson, pause. Why are there no personal withdrawals? Long silence. She looked confused. I asked again, you haven't spent household money? Long silence. Then he gave me cash. Interesting, I asked. How much? Long silence. Then enough. Dangerous answer. Years on the bench teach you. Women hiding numbers are often protecting dignity. I asked, how much? Long silence, then quietly, $300 a month. Dead silence, nobody moved. I looked back at the financial sheet, $1 million income, 3 daughters, $300. Interesting, very interesting. I looked at Christopher, asked, is that accurate? He answered, yes, no shame, interesting. Then I asked for 4 people. He calmly said they had housing. Dead silence, nobody moved. And honestly, that was the first moment AB stopped seeing a divorce and started seeing a system. A quiet system built one decision at a time. Then I noticed something else in the file, something nobody'd mentioned, a document old, unsigned. Date, 8 years earlier. Gender selection consultation, dead silence, nobody moved. I looked up, Christopher froze, first real reaction. Interesting, very interesting. I looked at him and asked, Mr. Dawson, pause. What exactly is this? And for the first time, he didn't answer.